What if the world is already standing on the edge of a war that could shut down global trade overnight? What if a single narrow waterway, just miles wide, could trigger a global economic collapse? And what if one man's warning wasn't diplomacy, but a countdown? Because right now, Donald Trump has just delivered a chilling message to Iran. Get serious before it's too late. Not a negotiation, not a suggestion, a warning. And behind those words lies something far more dangerous, a rapidly escalating conflict involving the United States, Iran, and Israel, centered around one of the most critical choke points on Earth, the Strait of Hormuz, a place where nearly 20% of the world's oil flows every single day. Now imagine that lifeline being choked, because that's exactly what's happening. Ships are being blocked. Global markets are trembling. And behind the scenes, something even bigger is unfolding. A shadow war filled with assassinations, secret negotiations, and rising global tensions. In just the past hours, a top Iranian naval commander has reportedly been eliminated. Israel is accelerating strikes at an unprecedented pace. The United States is pushing a 15-point peace plan while preparing for the possibility it may fail. And Trump? He's not just negotiating, he's pressuring, he's warning, and he's signaling something the world cannot ignore, that if diplomacy collapses, there may be no turning back. But here's the twist. While headlines scream about war, backdoor negotiations are already underway through an unexpected player, a country quietly stepping into the middle of one of the most dangerous conflicts in modern history, Pakistan. Yes, while bombs fall and tensions rise, messages are being passed in secret. But the question is, will it be enough? Or are we witnessing the final moments before a much larger conflict explodes? Because what happens next won't just affect the Middle East. It will affect oil prices in New York, energy bills in London, economic stability in Toronto, and possibly the balance of global power itself. This isn't just a regional crisis. This is a global turning point. And in the next few minutes, we're going to break down what Trump is really signaling, why the Strait of Hormuz matters more than ever, what Israel is doing behind the scenes, and the hidden moves that could decide whether the world moves toward peace or something far worse. Because right now, the clock is ticking. To understand how we got here, you need to understand the battlefield. Not just the physical battlefield, but the strategic one. At the center of everything lies the Strait of Hormuz, a narrow stretch of water connecting the Persian Gulf to the open ocean. It may look small on a map, but in reality, it's one of the most powerful economic levers on Earth. Every day, millions of barrels of oil pass through this single route, and for decades, Iran has held one critical advantage, the ability to disrupt it. And now, that threat is no longer theoretical. Reports confirm that Iran has been actively blocking or targeting ships aligned with the United States and Israel. This isn't just military strategy, it's economic warfare. Because even the fear of disruption is enough to send global oil prices soaring. And that's exactly what we're seeing. But the response has been swift and brutal. Israel has intensified its military operations, targeting key Iranian assets. In one of the most dramatic developments, Israel claims it has eliminated Ali Reza Tangsiri, the commander of Iran's Revolutionary Guard naval forces, a man described as directly responsible for operations targeting the strait. This wasn't just a strike, it was a message. And it didn't stop there. Reports suggest Israel has accelerated its attacks under orders from Benjamin Netanyahu, aiming to deal maximum damage before any potential peace deal can freeze the battlefield. Why? Because Israel fears something critical, that a US-led agreement could end the war before its objectives are achieved. Objectives that include eliminating Iran's missile threat, preventing nuclear development, and potentially reshaping Iran's internal political landscape. At the same time, the United States is walking a tightrope. On one hand, pushing for diplomacy. On the other, backing military operations. And right in the middle of this balancing act is Donald Trump, whose frustration with Iran is becoming increasingly public. According to reports, Trump presented a 15-point proposal to end the conflict. But Iran's response? Slow, hesitant, non-committal. And that's where things escalated. Trump didn't just criticize Iran. He openly mocked their negotiating stance, calling it strange and warning that time is running out. Because from his perspective, Iran has already been weakened militarily, and yet it's still resisting. That's what makes this moment so dangerous, because both sides believe they have leverage, and when both sides believe they're winning, compromise becomes harder, and conflict becomes more likely. But what's happening publicly is only half the story, because behind the scenes, a quiet diplomatic channel has opened, and it could be the only thing preventing escalation. While the world watches missiles and headlines, the real game may be happening in silence, because according to officials, Pakistan is now acting as a go-between, relaying messages between the United States and Iran. Not direct talks, not official negotiations, but indirect communication. A diplomatic lifeline. This is critical, because it shows that despite the aggressive rhetoric, both sides are still talking, even if they don't admit it publicly. And Pakistan isn't alone. Other countries, including Turkey and Egypt, are reportedly supporting these efforts. But here's where things get complicated. While diplomacy is quietly advancing, military action is accelerating. And that contradiction is what makes this situation so volatile, because it creates a dangerous scenario where peace talks and war preparations are happening at the same time. And if one moves faster than the other, the consequences could be irreversible. Meanwhile, tensions are also rising between the United States and its allies. Trump has openly criticized NATO, accusing member nations of doing nothing to support the conflict. That's a significant shift, because NATO has traditionally been a cornerstone of Western unity. But now, cracks are beginning to show, and those cracks could reshape global alliances. At the same time, another player has entered the conversation: Russia. Reports suggested Russia might be supplying drones to Iran, claims quickly dismissed by the Kremlin as lies. But even the rumor is enough to raise alarm, because if Russia were to get involved, the conflict could expand far beyond the Middle East. And that's what makes this moment so fragile. It's not just about the US and Iran anymore. It's about Israel's military strategy, NATO's unity, Russia's potential involvement, and regional powers trying to prevent escalation, all intersecting at once. And then there's the human cost. In Abu Dhabi, missile debris from intercepted attacks has already caused casualties, a reminder that even when missiles are stopped, the danger doesn't disappear. It falls back to earth, literally. And that's the reality of modern warfare. It doesn't stay contained. It spreads, economically, politically, and physically. So now the question becomes, which force will win, diplomacy or escalation? Because right now, both are racing against each other. This isn't just a conflict, it's a test of global leadership, a test of alliances, and a test of how close the world is willing to come to the edge. Because everything happening right now points to one reality. We are at a tipping point. If the Strait of Hormuz is fully blocked, the consequences would be immediate. Oil prices could spike dramatically. Global markets could destabilize, and economies across the United States, United Kingdom, and Canada would feel the shock almost instantly. But the impact goes beyond economics, because this conflict is also reshaping power dynamics. The United States is asserting dominance. Israel is pushing aggressively to secure its objectives. Iran is resisting, despite mounting pressure, and other nations are choosing sides, or trying desperately to stay neutral. At the center of it all is Donald Trump, a leader known for bold moves, aggressive rhetoric, and unpredictable strategy. His warning to Iran wasn't just political messaging, it was a signal that the window for diplomacy is closing, and that whatever comes next will not be controlled by words alone. But here's the deeper question. Is this brinkmanship or strategy? Is Trump trying to force a deal or preparing the world for escalation? Because history has shown us something important, that some of the biggest conflicts didn't start with a single decision, but with a series of small escalations that went too far. And right now, we're seeing those escalations happen in real time. So what happens next? There are three possible paths. Backchannel talks lead to a deal. Tensions ease. The strait reopens. Low-level conflict persists. Markets remain unstable. The region stays on edge. Talks collapse. Military action intensifies, and the conflict spreads beyond the region. And if that third scenario happens, the world won't just be watching, it will be involved. Because in today's interconnected world, no major conflict stays isolated. So as you're watching this, remember this. The headlines you're seeing right now may only be the beginning, because behind every statement, every strike, and every warning, there's a larger story unfolding, a story that could define the next decade, and maybe even the future of global stability itself.